Okay, so we're gonna start now, since David's able to join us early. To start off, I'm going to kind of orientate us to what I think is the area of sky. Now we're talking about what we're starting off with here, and I'm using this based on the information I got from other versions of the creation story, namely the Onondaga and the Mohawk. So the Onondaga Billbuck version and the Mohawk Winstead version, which I read first. And that's in H&B Hewitt's Iroquois Cosmology, as well as the Seneca version by Ron Armstrong, I believe it is. But that version only starts with her falling. It doesn't have this whole sky world society going on at that time. So I focused on the Onondaga and the Mohawk ones before Trina gave me the John Russell Gibson version. So it was actually those two versions are very similar. There's some small details, mainly at the end, that differ, but they're actually very similar. And so that was the first two I was going through to try to figure out what was going on in the story. Was it talking about the Younger Dryas cataclysm? And that's when I was starting to document the details and figuring out, okay, there's details in here that don't make sense. I'm reaching out to people and saying, why is this detail located in here? And that's when I read David's books, and then that's where everything started to come into place. And then obviously spending a week with David in Washington State for a week and going to talk with him and really kind of put some of the pieces together. So we already talked about it last week. There we go. So again, so Fucus is, I think, the central constellation that plays a role throughout the entire creation story. Could go other directions, but I think it really stays here. And the reason why is that on those two other versions, the tales start out very similar. There's a man and a woman who live in a lodge, but they provide the additional details. She lives on the south side and he lives on the north side. And every morning she wakes up and she combs his hair. And then it just continues on the story with that. So that little detail, why is that detail included in the story? And so that's what I said. I was trying to figure that out, and I reached out to the brother serpent and say, hey, do this in any other ancient mythologies about this, to try to figure out what it means. And it's only once I read David's book, and I remember, I think it was actually a Pueblo or a Dewa legend called White Corn Maiden and the Deer Hunter. And that story, where David pulled together what constellations are talking about, kind of made sense to me. So if we look at it, first of all, the lodge, if we can picture Ophiuchus like that to represent the lodge. And then, so she combs his hair. So we have Sagittarius, who looks like she could be holding a comb. And then the constellation Boötes, which has his back to where it looks like he's smoking a pipe, and to say that, okay, this is what the role that these constellations are playing. They're playing these characters in there because of that little detail to orientate us to this part of the sky. And then goes to the rest of the story, and we might cover once again that once so the male man being that he's playing, his name is, I'm jumping ahead with this character. Yes, so that means he throws thunder, or throws lightning. So once again, all the other ones in the first couple of sessions where David was going over all of these celestial or all these characters in other myths around the world, whether it be the Mayan with their thunder god, with Zeus, with the ones Maui as well, I believe. So there's all these other characters around the world who throw thunder or throw lightning, and they're all related to the constellation Hercules. So that's what we're trying to figure out, is that when he dies, and they say put him up at the top of in the Mohawk version, it's at the top of the lodge is where they put his casket. And the other version is at the top of a high tree. And then just when it's at the top of another high tree and everything. So we can envision that once he dies, he now becomes this character of Hercules. being placed on top of either the tree, the Confucius. They're seen as a tree. He now becomes that character. And then in those other two versions, there's no brother, there's only a female. And that's when it goes from this playing the mother, I believe, to playing the young woman, she goes to be playing that role, and she has to climb up to go talk to her father. So I think that's what's the Milky Way is kind of like a ladder, whatever, that she climbs up to get to it. And then in the other story, in that version as well, when she walks and husband tells her everything that she has to do, we went over that, and he specifically tells her you have to go, you're gonna cross the river. And there's gonna be a maple log to allow you to cross that river. Okay, to get to your new husband. And so I believe that river we're talking about is the Milky Way. We get to hear because we're gonna see that Bodes plays the role of the man, the husband. And she crosses through, as Dave pointed out, another this area through the Milky Way where there's not really a lot of stars or anything. They call it the dark rift. So that's playing the role of that the log, the maple tree log that's in there, that log that she has to walk over in order to get across the river. So that's just to orientate us right now where I think we are, where the creation story is talking about right now in the constellations. And then I'll let you go over on the cat. Well, first I want to see questions. Rhonda.
I have a question when you're ready. I listened to the beginning twice because I got a little confused about you talk about a brother and sister and he's helping take care of the sister's daughter and son. Where does Rade Zeru just come from? He's not in that house. He's somebody else in that village.
No, it says, and I have to kind of go back a little bit. It says there's a place on the other side of the sky where there's a large group that reside. Neto, near there.
Okay.
There's one lodge that's near there. And you would think of them as being pitiful or sad or well, think about it, like and even still today, if you have a big family, you have a big support system around you. Life is easier when you have support, but if you're all by yourself alone, they're always, they gotta do everything by themselves. So again, for me, that's the impression I always
need to sit more here so people can see you.
Yeah, so
he was like part of the bigger village,
and not Zerujis is it says to octane to askat kanuso dakwe to radiderusesne rungwe tanu yagungwe jadadenukwe, they're related, they're like they're siblings. So tiga yagungwe, that woman yagowi rayawahi tenyase raksa adano eksaa, she has 2 children and he helps to watch over them. He whenever go fasting, when you go out fasting, there's always, you're put out into wherever you're gonna do your ceremony, your fast, and there's always the one person that comes and takes care of you, and it's usually like at dusk, around then or early in the morning, and they come to check on you and see what so it says that man Zerujis, he was the one, he was like the caretaker, the looker over of the 2 down fended ones.
Okay, so what's the name of the brother? Is that
it says no deha dehunti sukwa. So at one point in the what I want to do is I wanted us to share like in the old way. So last week everybody drew, I told the story and then everybody was supposed to draw some stuff to get them to remember. So what I thought we would do is we would go around, and we'll start like, and we'll share what we remembered about that story based on whatever you drew in your pictures. And then we'll see if those answers come from there.
Here's the
And-
pictures lecture.
And there you go. And then once we do that, then we'll do a few more questions and then we'll keep going. Okay, so I'll start. So on the other side of the blue, so in the cosmos, there was this large group that resided there. Near there was the one group, one house lived the man, the woman they were related. She had the 2 children, a boy and a girl, who were down-fended.
And then, I got, I tried to spell his name, Rodriguez.
Radezerudjes, yanere, huh?
That's what I got.
Radezerudjes.
And, the house was on one side.
Yeah.
And the other side of the mountain,
Mm.
and then he went and got, well, yeah, that's all I got.
Okay, what next? No, that was awesome. Radezerudjes, you remember Radezerudjes.
Yeah, I put his name down, I spelled it R-A-D-A.
St. Regis.
Yeah, de Regis.
Yanere, you see, but that's something that you it's in there now.
Yeah,
Yeah. You know,
I did not bring in my drawing pad, I forgot,
okay.
I have a lot of notes.
Okay, so what do you remember, like after the Zerujes, what happens?
look at my drawing.
No, and it's okay if you wanna pass, that's okay too.
Let's see. Yeah, well, I don't know, I have, he dreamt,
Mm-hmm.
he never heard of such things.
Yeah.
Something about a call,
Mm-hmm.
born in a shawl or bag. Meaning they're born with special abilities,
Yeah.
down-fended beings, special corn husk mat, cattail fluff. Peace would come to them. They were perpetually by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They would come into their own.
Yeah.
A person would come, they would take hold of their power.
Mm-hmm.
Rodriguez had a premonition that he was going to die. I will stop reading.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, go.
Ditto. I mean, I.
Beres, do you know anything of the story after that?
I was listening, I was playing it, I was playing the video and watching, but I was cooking,
Okay,
so all my drawings were in the time.
all right.
Well,
No,
she ate it. I always spend on my mind on those $2.
Oh, we had a big topic.
You know, and I always ask those questions, but then for another time, but those.
What on? It's in the video.
Those
though.
2 wolves.
Yeah, we had a big
Yeah.
conversation about
And
it. It's in the
when I
video.
was listening to it and I think about those 2 wolves, I think about those 2 wolves that stand on each side of the Confederacy, but that's another.
Okay.
Yeah,
There you go.
there's
So,
a wampum belt too that they
Yes.
stand on each side too.
Because
That's another symbolism, it's symbolism, yeah.
so after there's this dream.
And in the dream, he says, one day I will pass and you will bundle me in elm bark
Mhm.
and put me in the tallest tree at the tallest
Yeah,
point.
awesome. Yeah.
And that tree will be guarded by the Lundude,
Mhm.
the guardian of the standing tree.
Yawa.
That's about where I remember.
Okay.
And I took it really, when you were doing the story, I was concentrating on the exercise to draw something.
Awesome.
Good job.
Yeah.
Thinking about the cattail fluff and
Yeah.
the children. Talking about that. Really.
Yeah.
Yeah, the corn gets mentioned in your.
Yes,
so-
yeah.
But that's how I was picturing there.
Your
A
Scott.
woman with her 2 down-pended children, they're
No.
making their way up, they're in their sky world, so.
Awesome.
But, yeah, that's about as much as I remember.
Okay, y'all go. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I'm like,
I gotta do less drawing and more listening, you know.
Oh, that's awesome because now that part of this, for whatever the reason, that part of the story just stuck with you, you know, so that
I
part,
got a picture of that.
Yeah.
Story, that's how I read.
yeah, and I bet you're always gonna remember that part of the story.
You know,
Yeah. Joyce?
It's my turn now.
Yeah. So there's,
I focused on one piece of it, and that was when, the dumbfounded boy was at the tree. And when he was raising him
Mhm,
to the top.
yeah.
and My work is not.
I will show mine.
That's it.
Didn't get
What a show.
For all those people who don't know how to draw, not just kidding.
what's this one?
And
Oh,
that's the part that, yeah, I was really focused on.
okay.
Because I was thinking about when he goes up. And all that.
Yes.
Mind, like, as soon as that's the first thing I thought about.
Doesn't it match?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so, when he shared that with me, how the story is directly tied to these constellations. It's, wow, you already want to go.
I didn't draw it while I was here, I drew it. Right.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a drawing at all. But I
Okay.
So for me, the tree really stood out, the tree, and then I don't remember what it was, but there was the tree with the flowers.
Yes, yes,
That, cause I drew one little flower.
you deep don't, do you? Yeah,
the tree
yeah.
with the flower, and then, I was thinking about the twins, what was the symbolism of the twins, the
Okay.
brother and sister,
Mhm.
and the corn husk and the cattail, the same thing. Oh, it was mature blossom flower.
Yes,
So that has to have symbolism.
it
mature
really
blossoms.
does.
And then mush,
Yeah.
because there was gonna be a feast,
Yeah,
and the mother and the children had to go to the feast.
yeah,
I don't know why yet.
okay.
I guess we're gonna find
Well,
out.
yeah.
And I need the word for exploding mush.
The mush.
Oh, wadungote.
What is
Yeah.
it?
Wadungote.
What's this?
Yeah,
And the last thing I remember is there was a dream, but now I don't remember what the dream was.
okay. Interesting, okay, okay.
What's this? Quenu?
Wadis,
What's it gonna write it?
wadis, squaw,
What she said?
wadis,
Oh.
like it will, it will. Wadis, squaw,
Wow.
do, go,
Cool.
de.
Okay.
Wadis, wadungote, it's gonna like. Yeah.
Yeah.
Penagase? Okay, right, okay, sure.
I like what she said about the,
Yes,
so if you look at all the spots on this cross, it's in there,
it is,
it's the center.
yeah.
A lot of the earth. what it does, and what it does. And you know, why we're putting it.
Doske. Oh, I just want to go, I want to finish here and then I'm gonna say something to Tenagaseko.
Yeah, what caught me the most was that when this young girl blossomed into maturity, she was gonna be the one who like brought back peace and restored things. Am I right?
She's the conduit through which everything will become new from the sky world, and she's the conduit through which everything will become new below.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, can I just say, like, from watching the beginning part, what really, when he talked about that, that chart with the equinox.
Yes.
And all
Oh,
that thing.
yeah.
Yes.
Big square thing.
Yeah,
Yes.
it brought me back to what I had mentioned before about that guy who said that the root, the tree was turned.
Mhm.
And that man said, I think we've been looking at it the wrong way all this time. It has to
Yeah.
be flipped. It brought me back to what that gentleman told me about, like, our roots are up here and everything we're supposed to bring from up there is supposed to filter down here.
And that's what the
And we
creation
flipped
story
it.
is saying,
Yeah, and we've turned it because we think we belong here in general. I mean, not a lot of people are spiritual, but a lot of people are no longer spiritual.
Mhm.
And we think we belong here, and we forgot that our higher self comes from up there, and that we get bound by human flesh over here, and we gotta, flip that tree.
Yeah,
So that was really important, and I was really surprised about the blossom.
yes.
That I questioned, because in our stories, we always hear of Goa,
Mhm.
which doesn't have blossoms, does it?
Well, Jonah is it go it, that comes when we get our great law of peace.
So,
So there's a couple of different trees, and we'll talk
Mhm.
about the couple of different trees in a moment.
because at first, when he said the tallest tree, my first thought was a pine tree, right?
Yeah,
But then later on, when he talked about the blossom, I'm like, what, an
Yeah.
apple blossom?
because remember, Gwen,
What kind of
there's
blossom?
two, there's the place where the big group reside, and that's where the tree with the blossoms are. Where the one house is Octaneto, there's trees, and that's a different tree. That's the tree where he's lying at the tip of the top of the tallest tree. So that's another tree. And then Jonaratezegoa is a tree that Onondaga. Jonaratezegoa only comes
Later on.
later when we get great law.
But that's what I mean, like, we're so infiltrated to always think of that tree first as our symbol and our, like, how we're- and that came in my head until you really start talking about the blossom and how important it's gonna
Yes.
be, and I'm like, what kind of tree is that? Then which
Yeah.
one blossoms?
Yeah.
So,
But when it comes to the constellations, each constellation can play multiple roles in the same story.
yeah.
So it's like an actor that plays multiple roles. So that's what I'm saying, Fucus can play multiple trees throughout the story.
Yeah,
So
and
it's not just that one tree and then it's a different constellation, that's another tree. It's just staying around the same area of the sky, but then the constellations are starting to play different characters as you get through the story.
yeah, and that he throws thunder made me remind me of Hercules. So I'm like,
Yes.
is that the creator? Because in a lot of the myths, right? That's the highest supreme one normally in their stories is Hercules is the big
Mhm.
god.
Mhm.
So he's related to Hercules somehow, but I'm still trying to figure out like who is what we call today, and maybe even wrong on that, what is
Yeah.
who is he in these?
He's coming, he's coming.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I think I got thrown off a little bit because of the language. I started getting mixed up of who was on top of the tree
Yeah.
and why did they have to go to a feast somewhere else?
Okay.
And who was the messenger telling them to go? Like, I couldn't tell if they were the same guy or if they were different people because the language, and I'm
Okay.
tired.
Yeah.
I was listening to it driving back from 6 this morning, so
Okay.
those,
All right, we'll go over it then.
yeah.
The only thing that I wrote was that, you just, wait, you just,
Uh-huh.
and I just drew the flower and the girl.
Nice.
But for, Rhodes Sarojas, I drew the tree and with him right on top of the tree. And I drew the house in there, but I don't know, I put it as, how do you say that word?
Ophiuchus.
Ophiuchus, yeah.
Yeah.
I know, Rhodes Sarojas,
Mhm. Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And I wrote a whole bunch of other words, but I don't know if I wrote them right. Some of them are Titskayeri. So that's why, okay, I already know. I mean, okay, know this, Titskayeri.
Okay. Yawa. Those list of words, a good idea, a good practice is find out first language speaking elders, say it to them
Yeah.
and see what they say.
And then
That's
I asked already and
Okay.
she didn't know. She's like, well, what's the story about?
Okay.
So I'm like,
Well, when another time we'll go over the list and then we'll translate it. Can you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any say? I know you weren't here, but
No, but
I missed you.
I only watched the, oh, Nyawa, kuya, this sucks, so Nyawa. And, I watched a video, some of it, and then, well, I don't know if it was the whole video, but I don't know if you ended there or.
Yeah, it was ended there.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Okay,
cause it was just, I seen all the beginning part and I was like, holy smokes, so I was like, even more.
I know
You
it.
know, there's even more, I'm just listening to that and then seeing, I was doing yoga, I wasn't watching, I had my phone and I was listening and I was doing yoga, but just listening to what he was talking about, the other constellations and how, and with the white dog ceremony and I'm like, holy shit, that's all I kept saying, holy shit, you know, like, oh, we're recording that. Holy crap.
We can edit it out.
But everything was just so like, it's almost like the dots were just being connected.
Yes.
And then all of this other stuff, you know, like what everyone's talking about, what it remind you of and
Yeah.
For me, what I see is like all the different things like that, what David's showing, that purse, that big stone and the symbolism all over everything. For me, what I see when I look at it is that it's all the same stories. They're just different characters and not different characters or different ways of explaining who these characters are within their own culture. And then the trees will change because of the environment the people are in that are telling the stories, right? That's what I got from it.
So today, I want to try again, just draw some things, even if it's 6 people as we go forward, because I want us to try next time again, we'll share based on what you do, and even if it's words too. So before we get started,
Record it too.
yeah,
Her.
yeah. Well,
Last
on
week?
Scott was sharing it with her.
It's on,
So what I want to do is I'm just kind of gonna go around and I'm gonna address a few things. I gotta stand up. So here we go. Okay, I want to talk about the flower. So I'm not going in any order, but I'm just what's coming to me. What is it mean? What does it mean? What's your dizzle? Yeah, it's this. So you get a bud. And then it grows, and then when it's ready to bloom and it does this. You dizzle. That's okay. That's what it is. So here, Rarundo there, he's the guardian of the standing tree. Rarundo there, he lives in where the big group is. Remember in the sky world, there's a big group, and there's a standing tree. And Rarundo there, it literally means he's the guardian of the standing tree. Oh, there is like that, it's standing, and Garunda is like that. Garunda. So he's the guardian of the standing tree, and he lives over there in the big group, guarding over that tree. Somewhere near there's a guy, there's his sister. I called her because she's a being from the sky world. She's a female being of the sky world. That's what it legit means. She's a female being of the sky world. Their brother and sister. She has 2 children, and they're downfended. So Yatidizu plays a big part in this whole thing, right? Because who is she?
The daughter.
She's the bloom flower. So what happens when a woman, when a little girl's flower blooms? Yeah. Exact. Yes. Did you ever hear that? Her flowers bloomed. So now she can bring forth life. So through her, it said, because she's down, her and they have the Haudenosaunee, they're down fended, they're children, they're born in a caul, they're born in that sack still. And they believe that because of that, they have an intrinsic sense or ability to have spiritual or not just spiritual, but a greater awareness or consciousness of the vibe of creation. So that's what, and Dehnino Dadu, I had asked when we started reading learning the story, Ma say my Ma, she was still alive. And her first language was Uwehueneha. And I asked her, I said, Ma, I said, what does it mean? Because everybody I was asking at the time, they didn't know what it meant. They didn't hear, oh, I don't know what it. So she said, oh, yeah. She says, I know that word. She says, she said, and she was speaking in the language. But when she was speaking, what I could see, she said, a long time ago, they would put them way out. This is what Ma said. They would put them way out and they would be there by themselves. And then somebody would go and they would watch them. She said they would put them way out. That's what she said. So I knew right away what she meant because I had fasted and I knew what Ma was describing what I saw was what I did when I went out fasting. Like, okay, it's like when you go fasting. She says, yeah, they used to always do that a long time ago. Dehnino Dadu. But it's two Dehni, two male, female, two of them. They're out, they're put out by themselves and somebody goes and checks on them. So those two, of those two, they somebody amongst them, like Rariwahas, the messenger, they said, because he has a dream and he has a dream. They both have dreams. Zero just have the dream.
That's what I was trying to figure out. I was losing track of which one had a dream, which one had the
They both
premonition.
have dreams. So there's the big group. Rarundade, he has a dream. He holds a feast for somebody to guess his dream guessing, and we still do that to this day. That's why we talked a lot about white dog. So they say anuwarori, they stir up the mind because at midwinter times it's all about guessing the dreams, and that comes right from Creation Story. Anuwarori, that's what it's called, that thing. That and in that anuwarori, that's where they have the white dog, and now they do the white basket. They use a basket. But Zero just has a dream too. He dreams he's gonna die. He dreams the first time there's ever gonna be death. What happens when he's gonna die? How they're gonna prepare, and then he also has he's dead up in the tallest tree up at the top. This dream happens with Rarunda there. He sends Rariwahas to go over there and say, we know that you people have this spiritual knowing, and somebody amongst you, we also know that you can talk to that one. He's spirit being, he's vibe of creation. He throws thunder. He's an elder. He's an uncle, and we know in our culture, in the female line, the sister, the males in the family take care of the females, right? You know what? You know what I mean? Am I saying it? I feel like I'm not saying it correctly. All right, if I had a brother, my brother would be responsible for me and my children, and that's how it goes. So here, the Zerujas, he's the uncle of these two, so he has responsibility to his niece and nephew, who are downfended. But now he's lying he passes away. He's at the top of the tree, but they're still able to talk to him. But who is able to talk to him? It's her. It's Yukdizu. It's mature flower. But she's not named Yukdizu yet. When she's a downfended girl, she's called Deyanodatu. She's a downfended female. She doesn't get this name until when? When does she become mature flower?
When she gets brought up to go talk
Yes,
Talk-
and when she goes up, because all what was happening was, they know there's something happening, there's all these dreams, there's these vibes going on here, this is going on. There's something really big happening, a newness is gonna come about, they're in sky world, they're in the cosmos, and something below is about to transpire. And it's gonna be a reflection of what's going on up there, but in the physical, and it all starts going on. And now they do a dream guessing, and one of these two downfended becomes the answer. But she's only Ienonhsaka'en, she's not yet. When she goes up, Rariwahas gets sent over, hey, go check on those two. We know somebody over there can tell, has this knowing, they're gonna know what my dream means. They're gonna have the answer. They're gonna be the answer to whatever this dream is. He sends Rariwahas, and now they're still dumbfounded. Oh my God, she's crying. What's wrong with you? Maybe you want to go see the uncle, and so it's preparing. It's telling you all these things that are going on as these two dumbfounded. They're growing. So now that last time Rariwahas comes in, he's saying, somebody amongst you has to go there. So now he leaves, and then she says, the mother, the female sky world woman, she's like, my kids are still young, they're still children, but it's gonna come time soon. They're gonna come into being, they're gonna come into their being. And what does that mean? It means their rites of passage. It means they're going from being a child to being a person who can now bring forth life. Because when she goes up to that tree for that last time, and he starts telling her about the mush making, he starts telling her, you're gonna go over there, he's gonna show you where you're gonna sleep. And the uncle is preparing her. She goes up to talk to the uncle, and he's counseling her, he's preparing her, he's doing his uncle duty, saying, all right, it's gonna be the first time you're gonna go to this place, and he's like, and what is the stuff about the mush? That's like the first time you're gonna have sex. He's telling her, he's preparing her, and when that happens, be strong-willed and good, and because he's telling her, you are playing a big part in all of this. You are the thing through which all of this is gonna come to fruition. The rebirth of being from the spiritual to the physical comes through her. So he prepares her, he tells her everything. And he says, now you're gonna go there. She comes down the tree, and at that time, when he was preparing her, he says, when you get there, he's gonna ask you, he's gonna say, and then he says, then you tell him, you tell him, I am the mature flower. And then she comes down the tree, and now that's to imply that now she is ready. She's all prepped and ready to go. And then Dosket, and then that's when she comes down the tree. And then I think that's where we left off. She goes down, she talks to her brother, Haudenosaunee, and she says, he says, it's time, I'm leaving. And the brother says, I think now I realize you're not gonna be here anymore, and you're gonna go. He says, but ever in the future, if ever you need, or you're gonna think of me, and you're gonna need, it's like to say, you just have to think of me, call out my name, and I'm gonna be there to help you. He says, and you're just gonna say, he shakes the earth. So that's the brother. He says, all you just say is, and I'm gonna be there. So that's him. So you're gonna see how some of these characters, how they're going to transform into those ones we talk about in our Ohondu Tigariwa Dekwa. So that's what's coming to me right now to talk about. Any questions? Does it make any more sense? Yeah?
Okay.
Did she have a name before she became?
Yotsizizu?
Yeah.
In the story, John Arthur Gibson just calls them Dehninodatu, meaning two downfended. And then when he speaks particularly of him, he calls him Dehanodatu, the downfended male. When he speaks particularly of her, he calls her Deyanodatu, and it means the downfended female. So Deyanodatu, Dehanodatu, Dehninodatu. When Zerujas preps her, and he's kind of in on it too. Think about it. The brother, he's right in there the whole time. Every time they're on shore, he's the one. Hey, I could, Benny. We are the he brings him up there. The mother's kind of like, Benny. He does it now. When it's time for her to go talk to Zerujas, he tells him, hey, uncle wants to talk to you. Yeah, I know what he's talking about, but it's better if he tells you. So the brother, he's always kind of in on it. It's implied. It's not really implied, it's written, it's in the story.
But beyond it, because that's thunder and lightning together. They're brothers. They're the same being.
Yeah.
That's who they are.
So him. Wait till you see who he becomes. Okay.
The Rock? No.
Yeah.
Were they twins? Cause it
It
says
doesn't say twins, it just says Dehninodatu. They're two downfended. It doesn't say Dehnika.
okay, cause you had mentioned they were both in that cocoon when they were,
Oniskeroda.
when they were born, so
Yeah.
I thought maybe they were twins, like.
Or maybe they were, it doesn't, if they were twins, he would have referred to them as Dehnika. But he doesn't say Dehnika, he just says, Dehninodatu. They're both downfended.
So it doesn't say if one's older than the other, who's the older
No.
brother or sister.
All it says is the woman, she has two children, a boy and a girl. They were both born with the call. And so then they are downfended. That's all it says. So a lot of people, like I've heard people talk about creation story and they get their own interpretations of what they think it means. But in the language, it doesn't say that these two are Dehnika. It says Dehninodatu. And it doesn't say they were born in the same sack. It just says they were both born with a call.
Okay.
Yeah, in the language, it's very clear. Yeah,
Special books.
yeah. So that's them.
Just that David said he has a few
Oh,
slides.
okay,
before
cool.
start.
Okay, so before we go to David, he has a few slides. Is there anything else? Because I'm thinking of the tree. I just want to make sure that we know that there's different trees. So there's the tree over there, the standing tree or Larunda there. And oftentimes you're gonna hear you hear in different versions people say, oh, there's a great tree and everything of the earth grows on it. It doesn't say that. The only thing about that tree, that the bright light, it says that, and when the mother goes to the lodge, when she goes to that feast, and she says, he says, I know one of your kids can guess my dream. He says, okay, well, soon they're gonna be ready. They're almost gonna be ready to do that. And then he says, look, examine this standing tree right here before you. Wait, you're gonna what deeds on a garden? It's not ready. It's not ready. They're buds. He says, look at this standing tree, and it's so soon it's gonna bloom. And when that happens, it's gonna be So it's all about the maturing of that blossoming of the flower. When the blossoming of the flower happens, that's when life can come forth. That's what it says.
Where's the feast being held? Is
It's
it
at
in
the
that
big place,
village?
it's in the and that's what the dream, they're having the Wadonyu Day, that's dream guessing, right? It's a big feast. Wadonyu Day means a big feast. Some people today, they call it a wedding, like say 2000s, people will say, oh, Wadonyu Day, they'll use that word as a wedding. But Wadonyu Day means a big feast. And it could be like any big feast. So it's all about that. So that tree with the flowers, it's a mnemonic device, sort of speaking, of how and when it's gonna change to the next dimension type of thing.
I can say on what deep,
Or what did the,
on what,
I just said it.
on what did that, Daniel?
No,
On what deep,
it's
what deep on the garden?
yeah, that's it.
It'll bloom.
It'll, yeah, those buds will bloom, and then that's gonna happen. But this where this other tree where Radet Zerujes is, that's where the one muscat Kahnawake, where there's that one house near the big place. Radet Zerujes, he's at the top of the tallest tree where they are over there. So that's a one tree, and then Rarunda, there's this tree where Rarunda watches over it. That's the other tree that people like to say, oh, and all of the fruits of the world grow on it and all that. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. It's very specific. That tree is all about it tells when the blossoming of the flower and how the blossoming of the flower is the sign that life can come forth in a new way.
Is there a reason why he's supposed to guard that tree? Like, why is he named that, the guardian of that tree?
It doesn't say, it just says
That's his
there's somebody there that guards that tree. Yeah. And it's not really about or maybe it is, it's just for me, that tree is all about the blossoming of that flower. And what does that mean? When a woman, when her flower blossoms, she's able to bring forth life. And this whole section talks about the lead up to when spirit transforms into the physical life. That's for me, that's what I really connect there. But I mean, Larunda Day to me, there are some things about him. He's very egotistical. It's all about him. And he's a jerk.
His dream, I want to know my dream.
Yeah, you come and you appease my mind. It's my dream. Everybody's come here to make sure I feel good. I'm gonna tell you where you're gonna sleep. I'm gonna tell . So he's kind of like a jerk, this guy. Yeah, he's like got a really big ego. But what is Zerujes is telling you, Dizu, he prepares her for how this guy is, and he tells her, be strong, be strong-willed, be strong mind, body, spirit, because through you, you bring forth life. Through you is how life is going to continue, and it's all through you. So I always think of that as a good lesson for me, because I met a bunch of jerks, and it makes me. I always think about this, and it reminds me of being a strong-willed woman, because we have so much responsibility. And when I hear the Zerujes telling her all about what's going to happen, it really did remind me of how to keep my own peace. It really did. When I started to learn about this, it changed how I think about things. And so what if this guy's a jerk? I have my own stuff I gotta do to make sure life continues. And that's how it taught me. And I think that's what this story, it's meant to do that.
It is.
Getting caught up in your ego.
Exactly.
And letting go of that ego, shedding that ego and becoming
one with yourself.
Yes, hot squeeze, that's exactly it. And I'm only, and because that's what this story, that's what I experienced, what she just said, and I still experience it. I still go back to it every time, and that's what the story's meant to do,
But it
The
also
whole
plays into
process.
our names of like, you know, you're given a name as a baby. And you might not, you may be in that bud until that 1 second when boom, you blossom into what your name really means. So he
Lucky.
may have had that name all the while, but when it came to this point in time, he was the one to make sure that it was when the blossom happened that
Yes.
all of this went forward. Am I correct? in
Everything
saying that?
happens for a reason,
Like it's in that timing when it just finally,
yes.
you become who your name is.
Mhm.
You may not understand it for
41
years of your life.
Yeah, yeah, when they have this name, it's them right away. You
Yeah.
see it in them.
Yeah, but yeah, like it's timing, it's what whoever, like,
And some people.
and
change their
everybody's
names
different,
several
right?
Times in their
Yeah.
lifetime.
This
I was
whole
gonna say that,
beginning-
don't we change their name without, like every different stage in their life, yeah, like
Mhm.
it's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's daddy?
The whole beginning of this story, the creation story, before it comes to the earth part, this whole part, that's the whole. It talks about where we come from, the constellations and all of that. That is what we have to do before we prepare to come down here. Before we incarnate into a human body, our spiritual selves has to go through this whole spiritual awareness that we're coming to do this work here. This is what she's being taught. She's being taught her role of when she comes here, what she's gonna do, right? The whole, but she's being prepared before, you know, and this is the whole part of the story that we've been missing. This is why we don't know where we come from or who we really are. You know, we just think, oh yeah, a woman fell from the sky and then, yeah, she made the earth and then, yeah, we were here. No, there's a whole, that's why we have spirit. That's why we have spirit. That's why we have to do spiritual work. You know, and clear all the karma that we come here with, you know, but this is the whole beginning before we even incarnated into these bodies.
Isn't it all not story? Isn't it? To me,
That's how you want it to be.
Like that, our community is supposed to watch our youth, you know, and to see what their strengths are,
Yeah.
see what their weaknesses are, and then what they're gonna become. Maybe that's something we forgot from that story.
Mhm.
We all should be watching and harnessing and developing those skills.
But it's said, and then like when a baby gets named, the people are reminded of those duties and responsibilities. toward
Yeah.
that child.
If only the people were listening.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of education for people who, when you go to, you know, the longhouse and you're just witnessing stuff and you don't really understand what's happening. We just see a baby, a boy being walked across and a girl standing there and you don't know why they're chanting, right? The vibration, like, we don't know that stuff. We don't have conversations of that stuff, you know, anymore. Like,
We do, but.
wow, I don't know.
I've never
I still get to say, let's get together and really learn deeply what the syrup, unless you go, you know, to where they were paying for those things at the band council for their employees.
You know, and that's why I just want to say how awesome this all is, because this isn't paid, it's not even. It was a bunch of guys from town who said, let's support people who just want to do things outside of the control of the controllers, you know. And here, most of all of us here, we've been getting together in groups and doing all different things and having these conversations. And I mean, I just want to say, I want to, what you're saying, I want to say Nyawakoa, because it's reminding me of how lucky I am, because I always learn these things, you know, when I was growing up, I always learned it. Whenever I was gonna be going to any of the longhouses that I went throughout the Confederacy, my uncle, regardless, he would always say, we're going, this is what you're gonna, this is what you're gonna say, this is what you're doing, da, 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 this is what, all the way driving to wherever we were going, I was always prepared. So I feel thankful that I feel humbled. I feel gratitude that that's been my experience. And I hear that you're saying that hasn't been yours. But I just want to say that right here, right now, is we're doing it.
It's starting.
We're
No,
doing
yeah,
it.
It's excellent.
And it's not in the control of Ronuha. It's not, this isn't in control, this isn't being controlled by the controllers. We all came together on our own. And these men are supporting what we're doing so that we could have the opportunities to because remember the first time we came, we said we wanted just to be our Wednesday night visits, just to talk and just to learn things and say it in a place where we feel safe and we create it for ourselves. So we're doing it, and all we have to do just keep doing it every day as best as you can. And next thing you know, hey, yeah, I learned something, you know. So now I should tell you now for what you just said, because it made me to remember something, and I just got reminded, and I learned something again, and from this most powerful story, and I feel so thankful.
It really is like it's a stupid English word, blessing to you though, because like my grandmother, fluent speaker, part of bringing back the longhouse. And when I was in her I would ask her things, and she's like, I don't know the songs. I don't know a lot of what's spoken in the ceremonies because I was in the kitchen cooking. So, you know, like, it's like a doctor, right? If you want to be a doctor, you learn doctor language. There's ceremony longhouse language, and there's everyday language. But there's certain things that are very intricate in words that I don't know. She said, go see your Auntie Marilyn. Her father was a longhouse chief. She's younger than me, but she knows better Mohawk than me. She will be able to answer you. I can't describe to you about what the Onondaga Wadekwa is. I'll just tell you it's a star. Or it's your grandma moon. She can tell you in depth how to describe it. So I loved her for being humble enough to say someone younger than her would had a better, deeper vocabulary when it came to stuff about the longhouse. So even her, I was there for everything but cooking. Always cooking. So I didn't get to listen. I didn't get to learn.
Somebody here just said, or maybe it was here, about it being, that's the time. Maybe you said it. That's what, like, he was in charge. His big place was to make sure that we knew about that blossom flower. And again, I think when we first started, we said, everybody in this room here, we all know something different. We all have expertise in some particular thing, and when we come together and we share, that's when, and that's our way, our original way, and that was our intent to come here to do this. So it's okay that, like, some people are meant to be the singers, some people are meant to be the speakers, some people are meant to be the medicine pickers, some people are, and each one of those responsibilities has equal value and equal importance, because if one is not there, you know, and people who do the speeches aren't higher than the ones who are doing the cooking. Yeah. Yeah, it's that, and that's what we need to just remember. So with that, David has some slides he's gonna show, and then we'll continue, because at this point Zizu is on her way to Rarundude's house, or Dinue.
Great. Well, thank you, Trina, and everybody. That was really, I can't wait to hear more of the story and find out what happens next. And some of those insights that everyone was sharing were so good. And one was talking about how by seeing the stars, it all came together, that all the different sacred stories around the world are connected, but they're just in different clothing. I forget exactly how you said it, but that's exactly what I'm trying to show with the star myths. By showing how they are related, it really shows they are talking about the same thing. One time I made a metaphor just to try and describe it, to say, if you had a house and all your furniture was invisible, the chairs and the table, and if you were walking around, you might trip over a chair or hit the table because you couldn't see it. So if you put cloth over all of them, then you can see where the chair is. Okay, the cloth is showing the shape of the chair. I think these myths are showing us about invisible things, about important things. I loved how Trina was applying. She said, this creation story helps me in my life with these, I've got this mission of bringing forth life and all these other things. And the myth, the creation story is, I apply it in my life. That's what I'm saying. It's not about creation that happened millions of years ago. Maybe the creation that it's talking about is going on all the time. We are part of creation, and it's helping us to, we're enforcing and contributing to creation as we recite these and bring them into our lives. So anyway, all the things that you were saying were so wonderful. I just have some slides to build on what Kyle was saying and to maybe give us material and evidence that, yes, there is a tree in the stars, and some of the evidence that I'll show shows how it connects across cultures. But I want to go quickly so that we can hear. I'm looking forward to hearing the story. So let me share my screen. So like I said, I've got a few different pictures, but I can just go fast so that we can get to the story. But I want to build on what Kyle was showing. We didn't coordinate this beforehand. I didn't know he was going to show that. So I'll just quickly breeze through the same area of the sky. Kyle, great work. I know it takes time to outline all those constellations. So that's exactly the area that I believe that we're talking about. It's an important part of the sky for the myths. We heard in the creation story right in the very beginning that there's this lodge by itself with not very many people, separated from the larger groups. And just like Kyle said, I agree, that is talking about Ophiuchus. In fact, it even looks, you could think of it like a long house. There's another constellation in the sky that also plays a city or a fort or a building of some sort. And that is the Great Square of Pegasus. It's, if you keep going up the Milky Way, off the screen, you get to it. I don't have it showing on this particular part of the sky, but it is a square. So there are myths that use the Great Square as a city, as a great city with walls around it or different things. Could also be a game board, like a chess board, things like that. But it's square. It's not like a long rectangle. Ophiuchus is, and it's a lodge. It definitely plays a lodge, a castle, or a cabin, or like a tent, a pavilion in different myths around the world. Oh, what I was going to say about my invisible furniture. So the covering that we put, if we're trying to show invisible things, the cloth that we put on top of the different furniture to show where it is, in different cultures, they'll weave different kinds of cloth. If it's from India, it might be, look like silky with different patterns. If it's from Scandinavia, Northern Europe, where it's freezing cold, it might be, furs or different kinds of, bear skin, things like that. In China, they'll have a different kind of a feel to what they're covering these truths with. To show where these invisible truths are, they'll put different coverings on it, and those will have a different feel to them, a different look, a different texture, but they're talking about the same invisible truths underneath. That's like a picture I use to try and describe it, but somebody said it earlier when we were talking. I think that's exactly right. We're all talking about all these ancient myths are trying to show us the same truths. So let me just show, we've already gone through this, but I want to provide a little evidence. Like when we say, well, is there a tree around here? I'm going to show just quickly some evidence that yes, there is a tree, there is a flower. Here's Virgo. We talked about when I showed the zodiac wheel, the first birth, the first mother, sometimes associated, often associated with Virgo. On the other side is Sagittarius. That's 3 zodiac signs later. In between Virgo and Sagittarius, there's Libra and Scorpio. I didn't outline them here. So it's like the first birth and the second birth. Sometimes there are myths where there are 2 mothers. Or if you think of Jesus in the Bible, there's more than one Mary that hangs around with Jesus. There's Mary, his mother, and there's Mary Magdalene. Or in the myths of ancient Egypt, Osiris has both Isis and Nephthys, 2 goddesses with him a lot of time. So this is a pattern in myth around the world. There's the Milky Way that Kyle showed to you. Let me just show Bolotes. Kyle also showed him. And I'm going to just show a little bit of evidence to back up what he said. And then on Ophiuchus, there's 2 serpent halves. The serpent tail, I put it in orange, is pointing towards the Milky Way. It's actually the east, because this picture is taken looking south. And then the serpent head, which is on the west side, I put it in pink. So if those, it's possible that in this lodge, remember there was a brother and a sister and the 2 children of the sister. So the brother who dies is the uncle that, they go and talk to. So he's the uncle, which is also around the world. Uncles are really important, just like Trina was saying. You find uncles in a lot of different myths around the world too. And if these are the 2 children, I'll just show a little evidence from artwork that it's possible that those are the 2 children. If you just look at the shapes, which one would be the male and which one would be the female? You can just think about it. And, the myths aren't shy sometimes about using different, outlines and say, oh, that's the, a male, part of the male anatomy. They'll put it, they'll tie in with it in the constellations and use it in the myths. Anyway, I'm not positive. I'm just giving some tools and some evidence so that you can use this language to help you unlock the meaning and apply it for your life. But it's possible that relates to the 2 children. So just remember those 2 halves there. And then we talked about down fended, surrounded by down. And Trina told us that a lot of it, the language means cattails or the fluff from the cattails, the bulrushes. In the story of Moses, this is a painting of the famous part of the book of actually Exodus, where Moses is put into the water among the bulrushes, among the reeds, among the cattails. And I've actually done in my Celestial Bible course some discussion of this painting. It actually looks like Ophiuchus. You've got the baby is in the Nile River. Ophiuchus is to the left. You got one of it's the mother and the sister actually in the Bible story. It's Miriam. It's the sister of Moses and the mother of Moses. One is pushing down the reeds. That looks like the orange half of Ophiuchus. One is holding her hand up in a certain gesture, which I also showed you in the Joseph picture. Remember Joseph when he's interpreting dreams? That looks like the other half of Ophiuchus. They really look like Ophiuchus next to the Nile River. But that cattails, that fluff, it's in the myths around the world. And then also remember that Hercules can be like a spiraling disc. It could be a wind, but in some myths, and I'm going to show some evidence just briefly, and I'll turn it over to Trina so we can hear the story. But you see how that could look like a spinning disc. It could look like a spider, but I hope you can see it could also look like a tree. So on top of Ophiuchus is more tree. It's like Ophiuchus could be like the trunk of a tree, and Hercules in the spinning form could be the branches of the tree. And then Kyle said, hey, Boötes, maybe he's the guardian of the tree in the story because he's sitting there right next to Ophiuchus and Hercules. And those are very good insights. Whenever Kyle looks at the stories and applies it to the stars, the things that he says, I pay very close attention to because he's right on, right on. So, oh, and one other thing that Kyle noted from the Mohawk version, he said, well, later in the story, there's a man and a woman, and they're described as being on the north of the house and the south of the house. I just put this star up there. It's not exactly where the North Star is, but if you look in front of Boötes, where I put that star, that's the Milky Way. That's the Big Dipper. The Big Dipper, the front of the Big Dipper points to the North Star. The Big Dipper is a little cut off, but it's up there at the top of the screen. The North Star is on that side of the Milky Way with Boötes. Sagittarius is on the other side of the Milky Way. The Milky Way divides the sky in half. So Kyle, you're absolutely right. Boötes and Hercules are on the North Star side of the Milky Way. Sagittarius, Orion, who's not on the screen, but he's on the south side of the Milky Way. And that, I've talked about that in different books where sometimes there's a battle in heaven and sometimes it's the constellations on the north battling the constellations on the south. Anyway, we looked at this last time when we were talking about the white dog ceremony. And I pointed out that disc right there, that's a clue. That's the winged disc. It relates to the spinning part of Hercules that's above Ophiuchus. And then notice there's two trees on either side, two pillars on either side of Ophiuchus. We're going to see that. Here is from the Americas. This is from South America. This is a famous stone gate. It's called the Gate of the Sun. We don't know what the people who made it called it. That's just what they call it today, the Gate of the Sun. It's in a place that's called today Tiwanaku. It's in Bolivia, right near the border of Bolivia. And it is an amazing place. Apparently the original name of it had to do with, oh, this is the center of the world, which there's a lot of that in myths and around the world. But I'm going to do a zoom in on the top, this figure at the top of the Gate of the Sun. First of all, Ophiuchus itself, the constellation, looks like a gate. It could be a gate, and it plays a doorway or a gate in some myths. But look at this figure right above the gate. It's a figure holding two somethings. I don't know, two snakes, two lightning bolts, two pillars. That is an Ophiuchus looking figure. There's Ophiuchus. And I'm going to show you that it's definitely related to Ophiuchus because right next and all around this central figure, there's these little other figures. So anyway, I put in that this could be a clue that, remember, and I probably won't say it right, Rate, so help me, Trina, can you say it right for me?
Okay.
Radecerugis.
Radecerugis. He throws lightning. That's his name. So he throws lightning would normally make me think of Hercules. But this Tiwanaku Gate of the Sun, where there's this figure holding two, what looks like they might be lightning bolts, makes me think Radecerugis might be perhaps associated with Ophiuchus. I'm just giving some possible clues. And then all around that central figure, there's these little figures with wings, and they're also holding like a lightning bolt. I'm going to make them bigger. They are in the exact posture or very close posture to Hercules. And we know Hercules is associated with Zeus. I already showed that. And Zeus can definitely be described from Greek mythology as he who throws the lightning. So here's a close-up. Look at how the posture of these little winged figures around the central figure at Tiwanaku are in that same deep lunge that Hercules is. So, you know, I'm not making this up. This is real, real evidence. I don't know if Radecerugis is associated with Ophiuchus or Hercules, but I showed this to say it's possible that he's associated with Ophiuchus. And then, of course, there's that spinning disc, which I said is related to a tree. So I'm just going to breeze through these pictures. These are for some ancient artwork from other parts of the world. This is from some islands near Greece, possibly from the island of Naxos, which is in the Cyclades. It's a group of islands right near the coast of Greece where Athens is. It's from 600 BC or a little bit earlier than that. But look at this figure, two arms raised up, holding up the sky. You know, we have a figure who's called He Holds Up the Sky. That is definitely an Ophiuchus posture. There's figures in myth who are holding up their hands like this. But also, there's the two animals. We talked about the white dog ceremony. And I said, I think this has to do with Ophiuchus. But also, look, two children looking figures next to this. I think this is a goddess wearing kind of a long dress. This is what you see. It looks like the constellation Ophiuchus. And also what's coming out of her head is some kind of like vines or tree branches. So I thought that's very significant if I'm trying to prove, look, Ophiuchus is related to a tree in ancient myth around the world. This one's really ancient, 1250 BC from Syria. It's a goddess again. Look, there's the two, looks like animals. These are like goats or something, but she's also holding what look like, you know, kind of like tree branches or something like palm tree branches. I don't know. But again, we've got tree associated with what I would say is clearly an Ophiuchus figure. It even looks like she's standing on a little mound or hill, and Ophiuchus is definitely related to hills and mountains. Here's another goddess associated with that same part of the sky. This is from the island of Naxos again. And there's the two animals, holding the two animals. You can see they're like two lions. They get their heads downward. So she's holding the two animals just like in the white dog ceremony. And again, some kind of tree branch type stuff coming out of her head on both sides. So I just showing this. This is a scene that is painted on a lot of ancient Greek artwork. It's this like a game of chess or checkers between these two warriors who are waiting around during the Trojan War. It's actually Achilles on the left and Ajax on the right. Ajax is famous for having a reddish beard, but they're playing each other like a game of checkers or chess. But look, there's a tree. This is again, I've argued before Ophiuchus. In fact, you can see their two spears. See, they each have two spears and they're angled off on either side, just like Ophiuchus. This is from like 490 BC. But the point is, Ophiuchus has a tree sometimes associated with it. This is like evidence. This is really interesting. I won't say too much about it, but that is the goddess Athena in the middle of their checkers game. Well, she is definitely associated with Ophiuchus. I've spent a lot of time showing that in other places. But so if I'm arguing that their checkers game or their chess game or their dice game or draughts, there's an ancient game called draughts or drafts. Anyway, whatever they're playing, if it's associated with Athena, they're in the part of the sky that is Ophiuchus. This is additional evidence. So if there's a tree, sometimes it's a tree, sometimes it's Athena, then that means we're talking about an area, a constellation that can be associated with a tree. I'm doing all this to prove or to give some evidence that when the uncle is put into a tree, elm tree casket and hoisted up in a tree, it may have to do with that part of the sky. That's why I'm showing all this. And just one more, there's Athena again, a different artwork, but they're playing their game, two on either side with the goddess in the middle. And so I'm showing, look, that means if she's Ophiuchus, which she definitely is, and they're playing a game, and sometimes instead of her, it's a tree, then by that logic that I'm trying to lay out, that means Ophiuchus can have a tree associated with it, a tree on top of it. So that's why I believe that when the uncle dies and he says, I'm going to die, he sees, he goes to and fro throughout the world to try and learn about his dream. And then he comes back and says, I'm going to die and you're going to put me in a case. I've also outlined the center part of Ophiuchus that looks like a coffin or a casket. Like if you look at old Western movies, when they make a coffin, it looks just like that. So there's the tree, there's the coffin, there's maybe the two down-fended ones on either side. Not positive if that's what it is, but remember we also talked about, I showed a picture, I didn't show it again this time, but I showed the god Vishnu from ancient India with a flower, a lotus growing up out of his belly button. So I do believe that that flower could be, when the girl is a mature flower, she could be associated with that side of Ophiuchus. And then as Kyle said, the one who guards the tree, Rarandote, am I saying it right? Trina, can you help me again?
Yeah, Rarundade.
Rarundade, his name means guardian of the standing tree, and it's got a male connotation to it. So it's the male guardian of the standing tree. That Kyle has argued, and I agree with him, that because of the placement of Bohodies, that could be Rarundade, maybe, or at least for part of the story, because he's kind of sitting there with the back to the tree, or the two constellations that may have to do with this tree and the coffin or the casket that is in the tree. And then I put in pink, when she gets the name of mature flower again, probably need some help. Help me again, Trina.
You're doing good.
I'm trying my best. Say it one more time for me, please.
Zizu.
Yotzi Jizu.
Yeah.
Yotzi Jizu. She's the mature flower. The pink outline part of Ophiuchus, it definitely plays a flower in the story of Vishnu when he has the lotus coming out of his navel. So I believe it's possible that Yotzi Jizu is that side, and we saw that ancient artwork where there's the two kind of children on either side of the goddess, and she's definitely an Ophiuchus figure. She had the vines coming out of her head, just like Hercules is up on top of Ophiuchus there. And I just wanted to finish, this is the last thing, but I'll show briefly, this is a very important story from ancient Egypt. The myth of Osiris and Isis was really central to the ancient myths of Egypt. And similar to the creation story where we have John Arthur Gibson version, this is the Plutarch version. We don't really have the original version from the Egyptians themselves in a nice, single document somewhere. But this later philosopher, Plutarch, wrote this book called Moralia, the Morals, and he was born in Greece, but it was during the Roman Empire. He lived from 46 to 119 AD, or now they call it CE. It's the same numbers, so whatever you want to call it. But he was much later, but he's writing about this myth. So we can go to Plutarch. We understand he's not the earliest source, but he's a very good source because he was born near Delphi. He was initiated as a priest of Delphi, a priest of Apollo at Delphi. He paid a lot of attention to learning about the gods and the invisible realm. And he wrote this Moralia. He's at the very beginning, at the top, he says, all good things, my dear Clea. He's talking to a priestess of Isis. Her name is Clea. And he's saying, sensible men must ask from the gods. And when he says men in those ancient times, he's meaning, people. If you want to learn good things, you've got to ask the gods. And the gods, the most important thing that they have to give us, he says, I'm just kind of skipping through, is knowledge and wisdom. They teach us understanding. And he says, you're a priestess of that goddess, Isis, that goddess whom you worship. Her very name means knowledge and understanding. And he says, in contrast to her enemy, Typhon, her enemy, he is conceited. He's full of himself, as his name implies. And scholars have said, well, he's He's kind of using what their name sounds like to say Isis kind of sounds like a Greek word for knowledge, and Typhon kind of sounds like a Greek word for being arrogant or full of himself. And they say, well, those aren't really exactly correct. Like they're correcting Plutarch thousands of years later. Anyway, Isis is about knowledge, knowing yourself. Typhon is about like being, he says, ignorance and self-deception, not just ignorant, but deceiving yourself. He tears to pieces and scatters to the winds the sacred writings, which the goddess collects. She collects them back up and gives them to her followers and puts them actually in their hearts, is what Plutarch says later. But anyway, it's really interesting, like dynamic. That is Typhon. In ancient Egyptian, his name is Set, but the Greeks said, oh, that's the same as this monster Typhon. But there's a part where it talks about Osiris used to go around and teach people. He went around the earth. It says the first thing he did was to deliver the Egyptians from their destitute and brutish manner of living by showing them the fruits of cultivation. He taught them how to grow things. Like before, they were eating one another. And he said, hey, stop doing that. Why don't you learn how to grow so that so he's like a civilizing figure, but he went to and fro around the world. It even says it right here. He went to and fro, and it's just like in the story at the beginning, the uncle went around with his dream. He went around to different places, and then he dies, just like Osiris dies. Typhon, which is actually his brother, so we get this is like the evil uncle, kills Osiris. So I just want to show, he does it with 72 henchmen. That becomes important in other myths because it has to do with procession. But he comes up with this idea of making this beautiful chest, and he makes it to exactly fit Osiris. And he says, at this big party, he says, hey, whoever fits in this can have it. And everyone gets in and they can't fit. And then Osiris gets in, he fits perfectly. And Typhon's 72 other henchmen nail down the cover on top as soon as Osiris gets in there. And then they seal it up with molten lead, and then they throw it in the river. That's how they're going to get rid of Osiris. And so Osiris, in this, and I'll just finish up here, the Plutarch recounting of this ancient myth says a tree grew up around that coffin, around that chest. It says here in part 15, so Isis goes to search for him all over, just like when the mature flower, or when she goes to her uncle to get the wisdom, when the down-fended girl goes to her uncle to learn, Isis goes all over to find Osiris. Also, Plutarch was kind of making a parallel to that when he said Typhon, or Set, tries to destroy the wisdom and scatter it. And Isis, she goes around and collects it back up, and she gives it to those who are really looking for it. So she goes and she's looking all over the world for the coffin, the chest that has her husband Osiris, or her lover Osiris. And she learned that the chest had been cast up by the sea. I circled it. And the waves had set it gently down in the midst of a clump of heather. It talks about a specific type of tree. The actual name of the tree in Latin is an erica tree, just like the girl's name Erica. If you look up erica heather, it's a type of a tree. Anyway, that's what grew up around the chest. The heather in short time ran up and turned into a beautiful and massive stalk. That means a tree trunk, and enfolded and embraced the chest with its growth and concealed it within its trunk. And the king of the country thought it was such a beautiful tree, he cut it down and took the trunk, which had the chest on the inside, and used it as a pillar to support the roof of his house. So here's some ancient pictures. You can see Osiris in the tree if you look closely in the one on the left, and then the others are kind of drawings. But look how there's two pillars on either side. It is, I've argued, clear indication that Osiris is also associated with Ophiuchus. And by the way, Isis, when she was going to get him, she sat down by a spring, by a river, by a Milky Way maybe, all dejected, all dejection and tears. She's weeping. And we see that also in the story. The down-fended girl weeps at one point. So then the queen, or some of her servants came down, the wife of the one who used the pillar as to build his castle or his palace. The queen's maidens go down, and Isis, she doesn't tell him she's a goddess, gives them some like perfume, a wondrous fragrance, a wondrous something. She helps by she braids their hair for them and gives to their bodies a wondrous fragrance from her own body, which I don't know if there's any connection to the splattering of the much or whatever we're going to hear about next, but it's very interesting kind of parallels that we find around the world. It's just evidence that your sacred stories, it's so wrong when over the centuries people have come in with their sacred stories and said, oh, ours are right and yours are wrong. No, they're all based on the same patterns. They're all connected around the world, and they all are teaching us something. And I agree with what we were talking about earlier. They're teaching us something about ourselves and something that is the same around the world, but it's been twisted. But when we start to really hear what they're saying, they're talking about the same message around the world, just with different clothes, different coverings, different fabric. So that's all I had. I hope I didn't go too long. I tried to get on early so that I could get it done in time. Let me stop sharing.
Rhonda has a question.
Small question. How come it's always the same group of stars that the stories are like? What about all the other
Yeah.
constellations like that are on the other side of the earth? It seems is like, why is it always Fucus? That seems, is there a lot more and you're just focusing on that one in that area? Like,
It's a very good question there. So remember when I did the zodiac wheel, I showed the pattern that I believe is going on has to do with our coming down from spirit into matter. And there's this crossing point with the Milky Way, and that is a rising up. And it's almost like the shortcut. It's not, shortcut's not the best word, but it's like a different path. It's the path of spirit. And so there are important constellations all the way up that path. It starts with Ophiuchus, it goes to Hercules, it gets up to the Great Square and Andromeda and a constellation called Perseus. And that is like the ladder. It's like Jacob's ladder when he goes up to heaven, or when he sees the ladder going up to heaven. So all the zodiac constellations show up in the myths. Aquarius and Capricorn and Pisces and Scorpio that I haven't talked about as much. They all do show up, but this crossing point is kind of a critical point. It's like the place where our lower and our higher selves intersect. And so it is the place of the second birth. So when we talk about, she matures and blossoms and has a new name and can bring forth new life, this part of the sky has a lot to do with the second birth, not necessarily the first physical birth, but the second birth, the spirit, the recovery of who we are. So it is a critical point, and I find that a lot of very central myths do involve this part of the sky. It's a great question. The myths do use lots of other constellations, but when it comes right down to it, there's not that many constellations. There's really not that many. So they all play different roles over and over, but this part of the sky, the roles that they play often have to do with higher self, spirit, connection to spirit, which dreams we talked about have to do with that, and second birth, recovery of who we are. Great question. I hope that's a good answer. Hope that helps.
Yes, it does, because like in a lot of like different cultures. Using that water seems to be the rebirth, like in Christianity, he gets baptized in the River Jordan. There's that, you physically have to go within that water, so it's like symbolic of the Milky Way, right? It's that portal to the higher, to reconnecting to your higher self. And
Yes.
Okay, just because, I just want to put this up here so that you could, so these are the main characters, just so you could, have a reference. So I'm not gonna be messing with these slides. We're gonna do it, old school style, like we did last week. So we're just gonna listen. We're gonna listen. These are the main characters that I want you to refer to, I suppose, or I want you to get to know. And just try to draw. Just what as you're listening, whatever sticks to you, like what Ryan Thomas did. Because those are. I have this one. Oh, but he just, yeah. Yeah, because I just I want you to get to really know these characters. So with that. Last week, she come down, she was Yotzi Zizu. She became the mature flower after her uncle prepared her and gave her all that wisdom and knowledge and guidance. She comes down the tree and she goes over to see her brother. And the brother says, I believe you're gonna leave here now. You're not gonna be here anymore and you're gonna be gone, but in the future, if you ever think to just think of me, all you have to do is say my name, and then he will be there. He'll be of assistance in the future. And then it says, Zok wa umtandi. So then she left. Yatekari was the Haudenosaunee the Wadon you there. Wahwadiga Rona Jokowana Rona Jotaro. So was it long that she had arrived at the feast? She saw this large group that had been gathered. Want gato joguiro de guacanano di yodizon tunyo. Wagunerago dina de oswate danu din niodizaskats. She saw this standing tree, full of these hanging flowers. And she was so amazed at the brightness and how beautiful these flowers were. Shaundawia dedi ne rarun dedi tonuso de wa iro ono wa gewe what sabri wanu du se ne rarun de but ni jakawenu danu wachiri wa serago. He entered the lodge of the guardian of the sandy tree, his house, and she said, I have arrived. He asked her where she came from, and she responded, I came from the place where my uncle lies at the tip of the tree, the top of the tree. Tonika hawi wa haru ne rarundo te. Oh no jero digo ises. Wajeri wa zerago. Daga don't you dano. Wasaguga on giga got ni jaguyam dan wasaguri wanundo se no hoda yum dajats. So at that time it says rarundo de. He said, why are you here? Why are you here? She responded, I came for the feast. He checked her out. He checked her out. He looked her over. This young woman, this young person, and he asked her what her name was. She said, my name is Mature Blossom Flower. What the man of the house, he said, greetings from me to you, or acknowledgement, greetings that you have arrived. Onondaga Creation ne giga wadoni de. Ezo yahunda jak we dit karundo de. Ya doso gotka we tanu yo sewe tina hoda gaya neganto. He says, the matter of this feast has now all become right. It's like become fulfilled. The issue, the matter has become right. Everybody, a lot of them, they all had arrived here by the standing tree. And you will all go through the world, this world, they will all go through. They will take with them all of the things that are to exist below. Things are gonna change here and also below. Everything new, everything will become new because my tree here, now the flowers have bloomed and blossomed. I'm gonna make you a place here, and now this is yours. He laid down a mat for her. So he laid down the mat for her, and there she sat, and he said, I'm going to tell you what I desire. You will make mush, and we will eat together. He led her towards the door where all of the things that she was going to use to cook were. And she gathered up all of the things that she was going to use to cook the mush. She placed a pot upon where it was the fire. The pot of water. And she threw in some flour when it began to boil, while it was boiling. And during that time, as the mush was boiled, the corn was boiling up, it splattered all over her body. She was strong-willed. She didn't say nothing, and she didn't even move. She was like a strong woman. The owner what gadis body. Zokwa is on a rago danua ear. So when the mush was all cooked, she removed the pot and she said, it's all ready. Zokwa haru ne raru de. No the tigo that dog yo. The guardian of the standing tree, he said, what's that all stained all over your body, all over you? What Jerry, what's Zerago? She said, that's what happened while I was making the mush. Then he said, the man said, my pets will wipe the mush off of you. So what do hits? Well, let it happen then. What year ne yotzi said mature flower. Sokya sagon ugenero tsena ogu erhar. Ezo di dehnina skoana asago di disco gewanyu wahniganuktu dinu yahujatatsu. He called forth his two very large pets, and they wipe the mush off. They licked the mush off of her, the places where it was burned. Ezo diono wakte nekti wa undat gatstade. It was painful, but she made herself be strong-willed. Di ona nero tena ogu wahnisa. Di nahodan sagunhan waharu neraru. So when the pets were finished what he told them to do, what he instructed them to do, the guardian of the standing tree, he said, what kunuaradu di ona ya deso ya desokta, ona gi donjatska. Acknowledgements to you that now, you finished, you completed it, ya desokta, you finished it, and now you two can eat together. Sahni kwanda ne. Ranu sagwe niyo yaha ta duga hekta ge dinue de hunti kwa ex de dewa ardu. So when they finished eating, the big man of the house, he pointed over to the field at the place where they were playing lacrosse. Tiga tona jadaroru ne radinionde ne anget ni gurio. Doga unka o yunza tahra se. Ya tayazayanerastan doga donde zeriwa zerabo dohunti kwa exi danu dosureni wa horn nera that. He pointed over there and he said, them gathered over there, they're here to entertain me, and if any of them should speak to you, it's not, things won't be good if you respond. They're going to stop playing and they're going to disperse, they're going to go on their ways, said Rarundude. Toniga hawi wahariho wanate, the dudahune on yohrane, danu dosu sikwa egene the wardu. And then he announced, he said, they're going to come back tomorrow and they're going to play again. They're going to play lacrosse again. Satudahune, when they returned, danu satdum dahunda sawa dahun tikwae. Okay. Rarung de yasagodori ne yotizizu ayehne gozoha zitkayuhataje. So that when the lacrosse players came back, they began and they started to play again. Rarundude, he sent Zizu to go and scoop up some water. Siagawenuhaje, zitkayuhadaje, wa undohetse zinue detunti kwaex. So as she was going over there to get the water, she passed right by where they were playing lacrosse. Sa dundayagawenuhaje, siagonegozohu ne. Sayada de hatikwa ex yasagun hunderane sagori wanunduni aundukan asehne ganude gigans legohawi. So as she was returning from where she picked up the water, one of those lacrosse guys, he caught up to her and he said, "What's quick? That's some of that water you're carrying." So zizu wahuahne what the sabunu waradu sok dum zahu wari what zerabose yo zizu, she gave him that water and then he thanked her and she replied to him, no. Zok Izzy ya agor negundi dano kayu hadaje yung zayu sayeh negagoha. So she threw out the rest of the water and she went back to the stream and to get more water. So go yung zayung jer then she went back to the place where stood the house of the guardian of the standing tree. When she entered the house, he was like, "Geez, you did exactly what I told you not to do." Yeah. Yeah, told Tom Sajere. But Jenny was Zerago. I won't do it again, she responded. So Krarund de was Sagorori, Zaderian, the Retigari was on a gossises, the Nuzanista, ya article de Agori one way undi, you get in. So he said, the guardian standing tree, he tells her, you know, you've been here a long time it's been a long time since you've been here, and your mother, she hasn't come here to confirm, agree to this marriage. Tony di owado on the seri was ceremony di no hoda, desat no scan, di not the judere, ne on the satandi dano, on the herori nezanistaha ayeri wa near the you getting yake. Dano dosa no wando tona sajer. And he says, you know, case Biddle, you've been here a long time, your mother, she hasn't come to confirm this. And so I guess maybe you could make amends for what you did wrong between you and I. If you go back to your house, tell your mother for her to come here and confirm this marriage. And don't ever do that again. What imagine someone talking like that? Don't know what ear. Di onsultandi o nistoneha danutogi na ere. Then she said, oh, she's going to return back to her mother's house. And so that's what she did. Suzai wenzi o nistoneha yot di zizu wa onda trori dina agoya da wonseru dini gariwes yagoto june. When she arrived back at her mother's house, yot di zizu told her mother all of what happened during the time that she was away, she was over there. Wanda trori ne otnistaha ne rarun de da sagodori ne ayunda troyana ne otnistaha toyaya danu ayeri wahnir de dina hoda rori wizo. So she told her mother that rarun de he sent her to come here and to tell her mother she has to go back there to confirm this issue, this marriage, this made matter, this issue, it's a matter that's been made. So yeah, it's true. It's been taking quite a long time for this thing to happen, this matter to be. What unda deri hui oste ne unda jan the ayeri wahir the gigan already wage. She was like, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it. Just hang tight. Zok what terra where the kahere ne yagunyak ganadaro. So she picked up a basket and she filled it up with wedding bread. Danu wa unda trori ne unda jan and so she tells her daughter, so just wait till I come back. Shaha wezi tonusa de nerarundu de ya undawia de danurao hondu ya jeda ne danuwa iro. So she gets back to Rarundu, this place. She enters there and she places before him. She stood before him and she says, Ono what geri wa near the discutne on the derundage gonto ne yot zizo. She stands before him and she says, I confirm this issue that you and yot zizo you're gonna live together. To wa teraro ne yagunyakstakanataro. And there she placed the marriage bread. Rarunda de yaharago. Yaharago giga ne ganadaro danu waharo donde watude danu onde wanadarage onagis kari waseruni. So Rarundu de he takes the bread and he says, we will eat together, we will eat the bread, and now the issue has been amended. Yahadasudera di sagorori di wa genyoska ne undajan dinigari wes. So he starts telling the woman what her daughter does or did during the time that she was away from her, that they weren't together. He said, no ne yagungue dinue jagurhane ne undajanga. Onokti oyunda trori yayunda twarisha de dinyahanyo. Titonu so de nerarundu de danu dosa dayeda ne danu dosa unka danitaro. He tells her that when she gets back to the place where her daughter is waiting, that she must tell her daughter, or go straight there and where she is, and you tell her she's gotta come straight back here, and she's not to stop, and she's not to talk to anybody. That's what you tell your daughter. Tell her, come straight back, no stopping, no talking, no nothing.
Elevators.
So doing the hot water, ne yo water so then he refilled up her basket with dried meat. Tanu yung zayeha we dinue jago tonju ne dayun cheste dina da hundere o nayawo ne ahonerio. So he fills back up her basket with the dried meat, and he tells her to take it back and to share it, or like pass it out, disperse it amongst those that are there so that they will be satisfied. Ona tinyores ayu dandi. But before she left, Rarund de oyana hoda dunda hariwa get do wahando. There was another issue he had to raise up. Ona ya gahewe amza sahtandi. Tanu nona ya sewe on seherori ne seyan a oksak down dandi. He says, well, it's time for you to go. And when you arrive back there, you tell your daughter for her to come straight back. Toner ona oskari waseruni hage. And at that time, when she does that, only then, or at that time, the issue will be amended, and everything will become peaceful again. Peace will be. When she arrived back, the woman, to where the daughter was, she told her daughter for her to go home at the house of her husband, the guardian of the standing tree. So she walked all by herself back to the house of Larunde. So during the time she was traveling there, so during the time she was traveling back there, she met up with 3 men, 3 of them. The first one, it looked just like her husband. Was sagori wanu do say doga dum dayago to johaje tano sagorori di dum da sagodera dane. So he comes up to her and he says that he came to meet her. Tat the horny was her agoni. She didn't respond. What to go. So what it says that she looked and he shapeshifted. Tanu zitso zahadu tanu wahadego. He turned into, she looked and he shapeshifted into a fox and he took off. Yah inu cheyagawenu oyaruwe zahuaga ohahakta itrade. So she had not gone very far, and she saw another man standing alongside of the road. So when they met up, he said, hey there, little lady. I came to meet you. Okay, no, he said, I came to meet you. Zok arde, Yeah, Tana thought the Hordy was her love. But again, she didn't reply and she just kept going. So, what instead? Dano Oguaho Zahadu Dano Wahadego. So he shapeshifted and he turned into a wolf and he took off. Yumzayunda Sudera, the Yagotahidake, Hetam Jerak, the Oya Lunguis of Huaga, was Sagohunderane, Wahuayan, the Rone Rungue, Rone Larunde, Wahando. So as she continued walking along the path, she was surprised. There was another man, she seen him. And he had caught up to her and she recognized him. It was her husband, Larunde. And he said, so what got me Gurhara? Ziate Zizo. Zok Dunda Mia de Rockdown. Said, I was home, I was waiting for you. I got worried. So that you didn't show back up. I was worried, so I came to meet you. So Karde, ya tat de Aguda. Danuya tat the worry was there on. So again, she didn't stop and she just kept going. Tony Gahawi, Zahatkuste, Danu Oquari Zahadaduni. So Quahadego Danu Yahunawir. So again, he shape-shifted, he shaped into a bear, and he ran away and he disappeared. Eregi ona, karigi ona, titonusa de yunzaiwe, tanua iro, onagi zagwe. So she arrived back at the house and she said, I have arrived. Zok tuntahan. Then he said again, Nyawako, the Orihuaguego da Serihuaerite. Thank the Lord that you. He just said, Nyawako, great thanks, hallelujah, that you did the entire issue, you did it right. What? But Nigari was this is starting to walk yard up there. So she, for some time, this was there. And they two for sure did lay together. Their feet intermingled. Shots. Their feet were like this together. Sahniye, wahyaja. Tanu what geste ne raudu nizera. And when they awoke, when they would sit up, their breaths would combine. Their breath, but raudu nizera, it's like their force, their life force, their spirit, their energy, it would intermingle. Ganigariwas what Ganigariwas what Uganda ne Dieneru. Tanuzi ona toha ya gahewene ayundewetu. So for quite some time, it was for a time, it became visible. It was you were able to notice that she was pregnant, and now it was almost time. It was getting close to the time for her to give birth. What are you doing? I don't know. I'll see you next week when she cares. Yeah. All right. Look, so now it's just about the time she's gonna have the baby. It said her husband. Wait, one more. Okay, ready? We're gonna end it here. Stahniye wahyaja tanu wahyaja stenera do nizera. Wa gatnigariwes wa ogonda ne dieneru tanu di ona toha ya gahewene ayundewetu. It's close to when she's gonna give birth. Rone, her husband, wahadaja dahnodu. Tina Hoda Wahudetsa. her husband, he spoke again. He spoke about himself and of the meaning of his dream. Okay, we're ending there. It's already not that went fast. Okay, Jan. So what's this dream gonna mean next week? Yeah. And we want to know what Onondaga drawing, her explicit drawings of the mingling breath and touching feet.
Can you explain why if she was downfended all those years and protected and her energy from negative, why they would allow her to marry a egotistical pig like that guy?
Yeah. Third, I would be.
You would try to stop your daughter from marrying someone like that, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't work.
Like,
They do it anyway, no matter
I have
how
an
you try to
answer.
stop them.
Yeah,
When
we
you
all
go
did.
through a great big challenge and suffering, there's always this great expansion of growth. Like you push your boundaries. If you're always
no,
like,
but I mean, if I was like isolated for my whole life and then you give me to that, I'd be pissed.
because that person, you in life, you only get what you can handle.
You know, you have to, it makes you gain a type of strength and inner knowing that literally does cause you to evolve into like having this other awareness that in general other people don't have. And when you have that, it does allow you to transform trauma. Yeah, it really does. It really does. And don't forget the story. That's what he's saying. He prepared her. He's telling her it's going to be hard. He's telling her this is what's gonna. She didn't go in there blind. She went in there
I
knowing.
forgot about that warning. Okay,
Yes.
all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so
I need you to make me the host again.
okay,
I think we all put up crap.
David, yeah,
That was great.
yeah.